go, guys!
Tomorrow, BBC One brings you two great pairs of superstars, Redford and Newman, and Torvill and Dean. You can watch both Olympic gold medal winners Torvill and Dean and the Oscar-winning film The Sting, only on BBC One. Redford and Newman at 6:35 and Torvill and Dean at 9:30, tomorrow on BBC One.
And Torvill and Dean are in action tonight on BBC One at 9:25. There's trouble brewing for Hawkeye on BBC Two in a moment when a goat devours the camp payroll in tonight's story from MASH. And here on One now, the 9 o'clock news with John Humphreys.
McGregor's message to the miners: go back to work, I won't give in. But Scargill says we fight on. 6 months jail for the cruise missile mole. Suffering in Brazil, victims of drought. Ambush in El Salvador, captive audience in an election campaign. And the record-breaking first 11 of Blaenau Ffestiniog. Good evening. The miners' strike is 2 weeks old tonight, and Ian McGregor thinks it's gone on long enough. The coal board chairman has appealed for a return to work on Monday, but he won't give in, and he says he's prepared to wait indefinitely if necessary. Arthur Scargill says the strike is now beginning to bite. Only 37 pits were open today, and he reckons domestic supplies are now in danger. David Steele is concerned about the role of flying pickets and the police. The Liberal leader has spoken of methods totally unacceptable. David Owen and the other SDP MPs are also worried about the police stopping Kent miners on their way to picket. And Labour MP Tony Benn said the actions the government had ordered were absolutely illegal. In the Nottinghamshire coalfield, police and pickets were again out in force. About 900 pickets from Yorkshire and South Wales arrived in the county, despite a big police presence and roadblocks turning some cars back. The coal board's chairman said today he felt those who wanted the strike to continue were in the minority.
Well, I think that there is clear evidence that the majority of our people are a little bit shocked by the failure of the national executive to react to the majority's desires. And I think that the intimidation that so many people have been subjected to is totally un-British. And I am very confident that the good common sense of the bulk of our employees will ultimately come through.
So you're saying that even if this strike goes on for weeks, you're still not modifying your plan?
I haven't got any plans to change. I think that we've put forward a very, very intelligent, progressive plan for the industry. And I know that most of the people in the industry understand that, and they're perfectly prepared to go along with it.
So how long are you prepared to sit it out?
Indefinitely, as far as I'm concerned.
2 weeks into the dispute, and Mr McGregor's as resolute as ever, bolstered by the huge stocks of coal at power stations and the lack of any pressure or panic from industry. But today, the NUM President Arthur Scargill again accused the police of using paramilitary tactics. He appealed to Mr McGregor to stop what the union sees as the butchery of the coal industry. The NUM says the latest example is the colliery closure 3 weeks ago in South Yorkshire, which sparked off the strikes. The miners' union probably wouldn't have picked Corton Wood as the last ditch in its fight with Mr McGregor. At best, the Victorian collieries got only 5 years of reserves. But when the coal board said it would have to close within a couple of months, the miners were incensed. Pickets set up at the gates and the Yorkshire coalfield struck in sympathy. Soon Scotland followed, then Kent and South Wales. But that was by no means all the British coalfield. NUM leaders hoped every other area would fall in behind, like dominoes, till there was a national stoppage over Mr McGregor's plans to cut 20,000 jobs and reduce production by 4 million tonnes, measures which triggered the Cortonwood closure. Many miners, notably those in the productive Notts coalfield, don't see Yorkshire's fight as theirs. They want a national pithead ballot before joining the strikes. But the Yorkshiremen want Notts out now. That's why miners been fighting miner. And that's why 8,000 police have been drafted in to help men get into work. Their tactics have proved effective, but also controversial, especially stopping flying pickets before they can get near a pit. Production's been badly hit. 127 pits are closed, 12 are partly working and 37 are open. If Lancashire joins the strike on Monday, only one large area, Notts, stands in the way of a total pit shutdown. The dispute remains as bitter and unpredictable as ever. The Coal Board's still hoping the NUM will reconvene its national executive next week. There's probably a majority on the committee for a pithead ballot. But Mr Scargill's showing no signs of calling a meeting, so the battle will continue on the picket lines, with the Notts miners still holding the key.
A miner who died while he was with a group of flying pickets was buried today, and a column of miners half a mile long followed his coffin. The dead man is David Jones, who was buried in the West Yorkshire mining village of South Kirby.
The NUM President Arthur Scargill arrives to offer his condolences at the family home. David Jones' father told him his son had died in the fight to save miners' jobs and their pits. About 3,500 miners from every coalfield gathered for the funeral. The mining village of South Kirby had stopped for an hour to pay a final tribute to a trainee pit deputy who died while on flying picket duty in the neighbouring Nottinghamshire coalfield. Miners now see David Jones as a martyr to the current strike battle, and the funeral procession was orchestrated on that scale. It's still a mystery how exactly David Jones died, but it happened on the night of the fiercest street scuffles between pickets and miners who wanted to work. David Jones' mother broke down as the cortege reached the parish church, and other members of the mining family comforted her. For Yorkshire miners and their union, David Jones was the unfortunate victim of a bitter struggle inside the coal industry against pit closures. But it doesn't make the grief any easier for the family. The NUM blames his death on an outside hooligan element who took advantage of the picketing to cause violence. Among the wreaths was one from the Nottinghamshire police who tried to handle the fighting when David Jones died outside Ollerton Colliery.
A Foreign Office clerk has been sent to jail for 6 months for giving a newspaper secret documents about the cruise missile, and there's been strong criticism of the sentence. Sarah Tisdall had pleaded guilty. The judge said he was making an example of her. Investigators traced Miss Tisdall after the editor of The Guardian, Peter Preston, obeyed a court order to hand over the documents. He said tonight he was shocked at what he called a savage sentence. Denzil Davis, the opposition defence spokesman, said it was out of all proportion to the crime. And Monsignor Bruce Kent of the CND called it unjust.
Prosecuting Mr. Roy Amlott said Sarah Tisdall's duties in the Foreign Secretary's private office included photocopying. She made an extra copy of 2 secret minutes from Defence Secretary Michael Heseltine